I had the opportunity to have dinner with Eckhart Tolle way back when, and I think it was when The New Earth just came out. And I said to him, because I was really having an awakening during that time, and I said, my mind is, I could feel it expanding, and I'm getting these concepts, but I find myself, when I get into a peaceful state, I find it boring, Eckhart. And he did a little laugh. And he said,
got the best laugh.
To the best. He's like, in time, as you go, it's like a little bit of a roller coaster. You go up and down and up and down. And when you're on those down parts, and not down negative, it just means in a peaceful place, the longer they get. So the longer those peaceful moments get, that's when it flips. And, it took me 13, 15 years, I don't know how long it's been, to understand that. But it also reminds me of the addiction to drama back way when. Mm-hmm. Oh, and, for people that are on that hamster wheel of that addiction to drama, and who are fearful that peace is a boring place, who do keep dating the same asshole over and over and over because, quote unquote, this other guy I want to date with was boring. Uh-huh. So let's talk a little bit about the addiction to drama, because I think both men and women can relate.
Oh, yeah. And I love that you use the breaking up with the asshole analogy, because that's actually one that I use to explain this a lot. The idea that you don't transcend your ego until you get sick and tired of it, right? Until you suffer at its hands so long that you're like, look, I don't want nothing to do with you. Anything you think, anything you believe, I'm done with you. And just like, your girlfriend who has been dating the same asshole for 5 years, and he cheats on her over and over again, and she cries and calls you and you console her, and then she goes back to him, and eventually you lose sympathy for her, right?
Right.
Like, listen, sweetheart, I don't have any sympathy for you. You already know what I'm going to say. We've been down this road a million times. Dump this loser. And until she suffers enough, she's not going to dump him, right? But one day, for whatever reason, the straw breaks the camel's back, and she's done, right? She loses all sympathy for this guy. She shoves his stuff out the door and says, bye-bye. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. And she calls you and tells you, and you're like jumping and dancing and so happy. Like, finally, she got it. That's exactly what happens with spiritual awakening. You keep suffering, you keep dating this loser in your mind until you realize it's not on my side. It's not here. It's not helping me at all. It's actually, in a divine way, it is, right? Because it's forcing you to seek your true nature. But on the relative level, the human level, it's just the cause of all my suffering. And I thought it could provide me with happiness, because the ego is always chasing outcomes. Oh, if you get this thing, then you'll truly be happy. And you go, really, ego? Okay, great. Let's go get it. And you chase, you get it. It lets you down. You suffer. Oh, and you go through that cycle until something in you wakes up. And that's kind of like the analogy of the grain of sand in the oyster shell that slowly gets refined into the pearl. Consciousness gets refined through this process of suffering at the hands of the ego. And just like Eckhart says, what happens is, as you fall out of love with the ego, you begin falling in love with something more divine, with that I am presence, that sense of I am within yourself, that peace, that stillness. And at first, it's just like fleeting glimpses of it. Maybe just a few moments, right? And then you're back on the wheel of suffering again and stressing about tomorrow. But you went, oh, wow, that was so wonderful. Those few moments on the couch or whatever. And so it's like you sort of start courting it, and then you start dating it, and you see it on the weekends. And eventually you fall so in love with it that you move in with it. And you lose all interest in what the mind has to say, and stillness and peace becomes your home. So if you haven't broken up with ego yet in that way, then you should expect it to keep coming back and expect yourself to keep suffering. And that's a totally valid part of your journey. We all have to go through that part of our journey. And like Eckhart's, personal journey, that's what woke him up to have his enlightenment. Was he couldn't live with himself anymore. And then eventually he questioned the voice of the one who says, I can't live with me anymore.